What's good, fam? Welcome to another episode of the Feed Me, Fuel Me podcast. Durs and Jeff coming to you from Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we've got one of the OG guests of the show, the founder of Athletes Brand, Kyle Mauch. What's good, bro?
What's up, bro?
Not much, man. Thanks for having me on.
Definitely. I'm glad we caught you before you made your transition back up to the PNW.
Fun times right now. Big move.
Leaving the blissful weather of Arizona right now to the sheer cold and wet of Oregon.
Not ideal timing, is it? Yeah.
A lot's changed since the last time we had you on the show. Particularly not the rebranding of Athletes Brand. We'll dive into your mission and everything here in a second for those who don't know or who haven't been with us since the very beginning. But the reframing of your company has been a game changer this year. But let's go all the way back real quick and cover what Athletes Brand is, what you do for those who don't know, and then we'll dive into the transitional year for you.
No, we'll just start at the transition.
Okay.
So basically, I started Athletes Brand. What was it now? 2010, 11, 12, something like that.
Yeah.
Officially in 2013 is when I started having it be a legal company. And it was originally started to be this t-shirt brand that we were helping athletes use their platforms to make a bigger difference, raising money and awareness through the sales of t-shirts that the players were designing. I've been doing that for the last 5 years now. And then that kind of grew to the point to where we're within the industry, we've been pretty well known as being that company, you know, for players and agencies to be able to send guys to do a shirt for a cause sort of thing.
Right.
But then earlier this year, kind of became that transition point. And that's where we launched with a great kickoff to the start of the year, went into another shirt that ended up getting, not say canceled, but it got requested to be moved. And then that created this whole just domino effect of other players either canceling or moving because we were having to fill gaps. And it just created this mess of a year as far as our shirts for a cause went.
Yeah.
And so it did create kind of this panic mode in the back of my head once I saw the second one and the third one like up in the air. And now we're going 2-3 months without doing what our company does, selling these shirts and raising money for a cause. And that's what's keeping us going sort of thing. And,
Right.
And, but then I went back, out to LA and was visiting a friend and had a chance to, meet with somebody, like said before the podcast, we'll call him a mentor. And he's a pretty well-known entrepreneur that is somebody that when they say that they're going to throw this massive goal out there, that you listen and you really think that they're going to hit that goal.
Right.
You know, and so the way it went was kind of popping in to his work, getting a chance to say hi to him. And that kind of moved from a simple hi, like, is he going to say hi back? I don't know. Like, and he invites me in, asks me what I do, tell him I own a company called Athletes Brand. We help professional athletes raise money and awareness for their causes. We help them build their legacy, you know, something like that. And he goes, okay, how do you do that? And it's like, well, basically we'll set up and design a shirt with them. I go through this whole spiel of how the Athletes Brand portion works. And he goes, all right, well, what's your mission? And tell him my mission. And the mission was to basically we wanted to influence athletes to make giving back become as much a part of the game as the game itself. And at that time was weeks after I had set this number goal. Like I wanted to reach 10,000 athletes to make them to help them discover what their legacy was so that they can go make that difference that they can make. Like that was my mental goal. And I tell him that and he goes, okay. He goes, how are you going to get there? Like, what are you doing this year to get there? And it's like, well, like I'm planning on hiring 4 employees. Like I need somebody to do data analytics and a social media person. He cuts me off and he goes, whoa. He goes, you just told me that you're building this company where you're trying to help make a difference. Like you want to influence 10,000 athletes to make giving back become as much of the game as the game itself, you know, like, and he goes, but then you're telling me right now that you're wanting to build like a Nike or an Adidas. And he goes, you're hiring people to build revenue. He goes, how are those people impacting what you're wanting to do with your goal? And immediately, when you've been doing this for, I think that was 6 years at that point, when you've been doing it that long, your mind isn't going, oh, okay, I believe you, let's go with it. You know, it's immediately thinking like in self-defense mode in a way, because
you're attacking everything I've done.
And I fully believed in everything I did with the Athletes brand. We've been doubling sales every year since the start. You know, like it's been a success. And for him to say that right then, that I'm building a company that's not what I'm building, you know, in my head, it's, oh shoot, well, how do I defend this? And so I listened to him, and he described like his business, his goals, kind of laid it out how he only has one person that does all of their marketing, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And he's got one person that, or he's got 2 assistants, and those basically run everything else, you know, and he's got one person that does their events, and like, he's just got this small team, but then a ton of builders. So he's got dreams, goals. Then he's got all these engineers that build the products that he's selling to help him achieve his dream, his goals. And he's very, very, very clear on what his goal is. And the more I'm listening to him talk and whatnot, and he goes, I don't give a shit if my company fails. He goes, because I'm just going to rebuild something else to get to that goal. He goes, all I care about is how I get to my goal eventually. And I'm like, damn. Like, how do I have my goal be that crystal clear on what it is, you know, and how am I not getting there? Because in my head, yes, like that's what I want to do. I want to change sports. I do want to be able to help people discover what their legacy is. Because I think if we can get 10,000 people in general just crystal clear on what their legacy is, what brings them fulfillment, what their purpose like on earth is, to be able to make that big difference, you know, not necessarily what their purpose is, but if they had that, do you imagine the possibilities of what could be done? You know, if you knew exactly what your strengths were, what you loved to do, what brought you joy, you know, and what was that unique value about you that could change people's lives, even if it's 10 people, you know, the amount of value that you could bring to that. And so that's like what I had to start thinking about. And that next day, just to bring this whole transition around, is I started thinking about like, all right, well, how does selling a shirt help me reach my goal of reaching 10,000 athletes to essentially help them discover what their legacy is? And the answer was, it can't. Like, a t-shirt can't influence that many people to change.
And before we dive into the numbers of the growth that you're about to talk about, you're only working with one athlete at a time, right? Per campaign, correct?
Yeah.
So even though you've grown, right, your scale is still small.
So we've kind of changed our structure because of that.
Okay. So
yeah. And so
I just want to give people the context and the perspective for where you're about to go with the story.
Right. Before that, we were doing 10 to 12 campaigns a year because I'd focus specifically. We'd put all of our energy into one person. They'd be doing 2 weeks, 14 days of reaching out to the media, every outlet that we could get to share their story. We create this whole brand basically behind them based off of what their strengths are, their passions are, and how they can make that difference. And when we were doing that, I didn't know that was of value. You know, I've been doing all that for free for the athletes for 6 years, and now realizing, like, shoot, like, it was the conversations, not the shirt sales. The conversations were what was being impactful. That was what was getting the players to want to come to me rather than our competitors. And it wasn't the shirt sales. Because shoot, like Sevenly, they sell more shirts than we can. They got a much bigger reach. Like, they built this platform. You know, they crushed it. If you're going to go do a shirt and you're just solely focused on raising a ton of money, go to Sevenly. They're crushing it. You know, if you want to do something that's going to change your life and be able to actually change however many, just whatever your cause is, people's lives, then come to us. Because I'm going to be more focused on figuring out, what's a cause that is reputable and that you're going to love and you're going to want to do for the next 30, 40 years. And B, I'm going to tell you what your own story is based off of talking to you, figuring out what are your strengths, what are your unique values, those skills and experiences that you've kind of grown from your story from the day you were born until today. You know, like that's the cool thing is every single person in the world, you know, has a different value like set to bring. Not care who you are. Nobody's lived the same life that you've lived. Nobody. So you have completely different experiences and skills combined that when you're gone, when you're dead, the world's going to miss it. They might never know. We might never know that we miss it, but we do.
Right.
Because that'll never come around again. So that's what I try to help bring to light with the players is those values, you know, and sometimes it's how they can help make a dent on Alzheimer's. And sometimes it's how you can just bring people joy in a sense, you know. And I think I told you about Jerron Brown. He's a wide receiver for the Seahawks, and he was with the Cardinals last year. But he's a military brat, you know, him and his wife. They both grew up as kids in the military, and he just this last offseason, the NFL sent him over to Germany to go meet with the troops over there. And we were talking on the phone, and I forget what it was. Oh, it was bowling was the one that he kind of threw out there that he was interested in. And it was about a 2-hour long phone call. And long story short, it came to a conclusion that bowling wasn't the thing that he could make this just insane impact on, do it with ease, and love doing it every day. But what he could was his story of having to move every couple of years. Like he said, he finally had a best friend when he was in like 6th grade or something like that. And then he had to get up and move, and there wasn't MySpace or anything like that back then where you could just connect and stay connected.
Right.
So he's never talked to the kid again. And that was his only best friend that he had from grade school.
Sure.
Because he is in different countries, in Puerto Rico and California and Georgia and all over the place. But how many tens of thousands of other kids going through that same scenario? He can connect with those kids in a way that nobody else can because he's achieved the impossible.
Right.
You know, he's that proof that you might have the cards stacked against you in that sense of not having this normality as a kid, you know, but you can still be one of the best football players in the world. Right. You know, he went to Clemson and was a star at Clemson. Like it's just this opportunity to connect with people and change lives in a way that nobody else really can in that sense. And so being able to find that, even if there's 2,000 other people doing that exact same thing, if that's his strength, do it. Because you're going to make a massive impact in it. You know, so that's what we discovered, and that's what kind of led to this year was that conversation with my mentor, and then also kind of realizing around that same time that our strength wasn't shirts. Our product that was going to change the world wasn't shirts. It was these conversations. It was helping players, helping people discover what their legacy is. What's this thing that you don't have to die to find out what it is? You know, that you can live it today. Right. And not just live it, but you can build the shit out of that for the next 40 years. You know, so that's where we made this big change. It's like we reverse ordered everything. So instead of focusing on the shirt first, making that our product, and then having a video and having the conversation, that sort of stuff, being just a part of making a shirt and raising awareness. Now we have that conversation be that full circled, like this is what our focus is. This is everything that we're going to put into it. That's the impact. If we can figure out what your legacy is today, then that is going to be the success. And now let's get you going. Let's jumpstart that. We can design a shirt. We can film a documentary. We can set up some events for you. What's going to be that first step? So now the shirt is kind of this byproduct. Right. So if we shoot a documentary, at the end of the doc, we're advertising the shirt that was worn throughout it. And that's going to be able to raise the money to jumpstart if they're starting a foundation or if they're helping another foundation or whatever it is, you know? So it's weird just looking at it from that perspective was doing the conversations. I can do those one by one. I'm not going to do 10,000 most likely, but if I can do as many as possible, and that's where he was talking about the numbers, like just over a month after just like realizing this and putting it together, I had over 720 consultations set up, scheduled.
Damn.
And it got to the point where after the first like 50, 60, I started having to charge to get the consultation locked in. And that was this big confirmation that, shoot, like I am on the right track right now. You know, it was reaching out to these players. And what was weird was it wasn't the players that I've worked with for the last 6 years.
Right.
It started with a football player that I spoke at this event out at the ESPYs, and that turned into another football player, into another teammate, into another teammate. So a guy that played on a team that I used to play with. And it was this whole different industry that I'd never fully tapped into. It wasn't baseball. It was crazy. But without having lived those last 6 years building my business and chasing what I thought was my dream and my purpose, and we can get into more why I do air quotes on purpose. But, but I think that was all what gave me the opportunity to basically find what are my unique values, the things that create my story and my skill set and experiences and all that stuff, and allow me to bring that together as what my relevant value is, that thing that I can use today that's unique about me, that's of value to me, that can be able to tap into and make a difference in somebody else's life, that makes my life more valuable, you know? And so it's,
Dude, after that conversation with your mentor, how long did it take for you to come around to that realization? And what did you do? Like, what was your process of coming to that realization? Like, were you journaling? How'd you come to it?
No, I just slept on it. Did.
Yeah.
Slept on it and realized, I don't remember now if it was that night or the next morning, but I just realized, like, shit, a shirt's not going to allow me to achieve that goal. It's a segue there maybe, but I'll never be able to truly know if I've attained 10,000 athletes of impacting them based off of the sales of a shirt. And so there wasn't really any process to me outside of realization and then taking action. Once I realized that, I literally, like, I truly believe it, that was me realizing what my legacy is right now. You know, it's that thing that I can really go out and build my life around and use all of my values and my skills and know how to accomplish it, know what I need to accomplish. And it made it so crystal clear. And in the past, when we've been setting our yearly goals of how much money to raise, of how many cause campaigns to do, all that stuff with that mission statement out there, I never knew how to get to that mission statement. I didn't. I just assumed it was an impossible thing to be able to, like, put an exact number on. But one day I'll be able to know, like, we're probably over 10,000 athletes impacted. Like, that was my mindset, because I didn't think it was possible to know, like, your reach, you know? But once I realized that it was, like, it wasn't like this whole shirt sales thing was this conflict that I never knew existed. Once I realized that it was, oh man, if I can do one-on-one consultations, then shoot, just in the next year, I could probably do 1,000
For sure.
You know? And then if I 10X that, I could probably do 10,000. Yeah, it's going to suck. It's going to be a lot of work, but I'm enjoying doing it. Right. It's going to be really, really tiring and really exhausting and whatnot, but I'm enjoying doing it because I can see the impact that's being made. I can visually see it. On the first 30 that I did, only one of them didn't end in tears.
Really?
One of them. It was weird.
What an asshole.
Yeah. Like, it did, man. Like, the first few, I felt like a dick.
What is, like, is there a question that you ask that creates the aha moment that triggers the emotion in that consultation? Like, have you pinpointed, like, what the thing is for people?
There's a process that causes it. And like my background's psychology, and I've discovered that over the last few years that is my strength in marketing and everything that I do right now. And the way that I've structured what my question asking process is, is something I need to try to duplicate, because if I can help get somebody else that also has a good understanding of people to be able to follow that process, then it could be something where we could really 10X that, you know?
Right.
But I try to take people through an emotional roller coaster. In a sense, it's get to know them. And I want to make it sound fake, because it's not. It comes out naturally. But get to know them, and then I want to get everybody that's on the call, it's usually them and their spouse,
Okay.
in a really good mood, talking about really cool things. You know, like what are their successes right now? What are some cool things happening at home? It's around the holidays. What are you guys doing for the holidays? Like, I really want to bring out good feelings, and then we'll get serious, and I'll let them know that we're going to get serious. You know, I'll say, hey, like, all right, I've got some questions that I want to ask you, and some of them might be hard, but some are going to be really fun too. And then I'll just go straight to it. And one thing that I share, that I usually, that I always ask is, share what your 5 best memories or favorite or ones that just make you feel good. You know, from as early back as you can remember to today. You know, think on it, take your time. You know, we're in no rush. And usually those come out pretty quick. You know, those will come out in probably 5 minutes or so. Like, we'll get through all those. There might be one that we dig into extra. But I got a good sense of figuring out which ones, just based off their facial expressions, the way that they say it, which ones actually have more emotion tied behind them. Usually people talk with more excitement about something that, oh shoot, yeah, you know, like there's that memory.
Yeah.
And they go into that a little bit more. And then after that, once I see that there's nothing else that needs to be brought out of it, sometimes I'll like, give me 2-3 more. Like, if they're not if all of them have to do with baseball,
Right.
You know, yeah, cause I've noticed that that's a common theme too, is athletes will, high school football memory, college, this play, you know, this championship, whatever it is.
They're attached to
it is,
they do.
and they're used to being interviewed about that stuff. So that's where their head goes immediately.
Okay.
Is about football memories. That's what people usually ask them.
Sure.
So it's trying to change their thought process. And then after that, it's changing up the emotions to, all right, well, what are your 5 worst or toughest memories that you can think of, all the way back to the earliest that you can remember to today? And take your time. Like, if it takes 30 minutes, it takes an hour, it's totally cool. Like, just take your time, but you have to be real with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. And if you can't be honest with me, then this is a waste of my time. This is a waste of your time. And I don't want to be on this call anymore.
Yeah.
And if you can't, like that, I think that is the most important piece to our conversation, is making them realize that they are wasting my time. They are wasting their time. They are wasting their spouse's time if they're not going to be honest about it. Because there's memories that people like to cover up.
Sure.
But those are typically the most impactful ones in their lives. And those are the ones that they need to get through. And honestly, those are usually the ones that they can use of value to help others that have those same situations.
Right.
You know, so there's been a lot of stuff that's come out in conversations. There's been admittances to, well, shoot, there's been, I don't know how many I should say, but there's been a lot of stuff. Like, there's been the darkest of dark stuff to come out, but then there's also people that just struggle with coming out with negative things to say.
Well, the two that come out to me in conversations that we've had were the football player who with testicular cancer that didn't want to be the poster boy for that cause before you reframed. So that was a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's the guy with Crohn's or
Yeah, a couple. Yeah.
yeah, who, you know, they've got all this stuff that goes on internally that, you know, for whatever perceptive fear they have, don't want that to come out to the forefront. But at the same time, having made it where they've made it despite those circumstances, that's the impactful story that should be out there. That's the vulnerability that creates the connection. And so those are the two that stick out in my mind that you and I have discussed offline that really drive home exactly what you're talking about.
They do. Yeah. No, like, because that was a situation with the testicular cancer one. And it's like, I get it. It's one of those things where, and same thing with Crohn's, it's one of those things that's not fun to talk about.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure he went through jokes from teammates in high school and college and stuff about it, you know, and so it's not something that you want to be known, like what he said was being known as the ball guy. Like,
Right.
But at the same time, if you own that, like he did, he ended up deciding to own it. And if you own that, he's on the cover of the New York Times and ESPN. They're talking about it during his games and just raised insane awareness.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of new connections I got from that, you know, from people coming through, like reaching out, wanting to get in touch with them or buying product and whatnot. And when you own something that is typically, like I said, the hardest thing in your life, then yeah, like there's other people that can connect with that on such a deep emotional level. And it was the same thing with him, like with the other one with Jake Diekman, the Crohn's and colitis. He came to me with that. I had nothing to do with helping him discover what his cause or legacy or anything like that was. He discovered it on his own through, I think he lost like 20 pounds or something like that. In the course of a couple months, one off season, 30 pounds maybe. And just decided like, I'm a big leaguer. I want to do something about this while I can. He decided to take action based off of going through a dark time. You know, like that was dope. And I'm writing this book right now, and there's a chapter where I talk about that and that it doesn't always have to be, there's two ways to do it, to discover what your sense of purpose is or what your legacy is. And one of them is to get help, to ask somebody that can ask the right questions to guide you through. You know, I really do think that you have to take them through this emotional roller coaster, like with the positive, the negative. It got really dark and sad, and I could tell that it was hard to talk about in front of their spouses and stuff. But then you got to bring them back. You got to reel them back, get them excited again, talking about those pros, you know. But then it's more about, all right, well, which ones were emotional? Bring those back. And so you might have to go up and down a few times before you really hit them with, here's what I think that your thing is, man. And then if they don't get excited about that, or you don't see something twinkle in their eye, then you're off. You need to keep talking, you know. But that's the thing, like, is it doesn't always have to be a conversation. You can also discover it on your own. I discovered mine on my own with the help of one question, basically, eventually.
Right.
And like, I was on the right track. I was there. I thought I knew what my purpose was and all this stuff. And then one question made me rethink everything. It's like, that was it. It's been sitting right in front of my nose the whole time.
Yeah.
You know,
that's awesome, man. How is that? So, you know, it's obviously an emotional roller coaster for the athlete. What's that process like for you?
No. So those first 30, like I said, 30 was my cutoff before I decided. Because my goal was 720. Because that's what I thought that I could physically fit in before January 1st.
Okay. That
was the initial goal, and I think I made that in July.
Mission accomplished.
And not mission accomplished, I'll tell you that much. Far, far from that. But what happened was those first 30 that I did, I was crushing them out, and they were coming in quick, you know, and it was awesome. But it was having to do 5 to 6 a day.
Yeah. And
for me, I started realizing, and it took me probably about 15 to realize it, then another 15 to say, okay, like I need to stop. It was this emotional roller coaster for myself.
Right.
Because I was having to reset within an hour to go do another one. Some of these calls would last 3-4 hours. Some of them would be 15 minutes. We're talking. It's like, shit, man, you already know what you're doing. Do this. I'll put together a plan for you. Here's how we'll take action. That's what you really needed. You really needed to know how to take that first step.
Right.
You know, but some, it would be, they're just unwilling to get things out. They're these big masculine men, you know, that don't want to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the only way to discover what you're going to do to change the freaking world. It's the most manly thing you could do, you know? And so that's what was tough for me, was having to reset and forget about hearing about this guy's story and making him cry from bringing up something that he probably hasn't brought up in 20 years, you know, and then going and doing it again and then doing it again and then thinking about it all night, you know, about like one guy literally, I don't know if I should say this. I'll pass it. But there's dark stuff that would tear a family apart, and I don't know what happened after that call.
Okay.
You know, they were both on the call together. Some things got said and admitted, and I don't know what happened. It seemed like things were fine, you know, but that's stuff that I go to bed thinking about, like, God, like should I have made him go that far?
Right.
Starts making me question myself, you know. But I do believe in the process that I take the guys through, because all the feedback that they've given me back, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it took me so long to get to the point of feeling comfortable even doing it, because I'm a college dropout. I never got my psychology degree. I never went to try to get my master, obviously, or anything like that.
Right.
So I did always kind of question myself if I have the right to talk about this stuff with people.
Sure.
And so when those moments happen, it kind of makes me think, like, gosh, like, was this a moment that I should have just like, no, like, let's not talk about that, you know? But usually when they bring that up, I don't say, oh, tell me more, you know? I don't do that, but I'll let them talk. I'll let them say what they want. And so it is that kind of emotional roller coaster. So what I did was that 30 is like, all right, I need to space these. I need to do like, set this up so I can do like maybe one a day, maybe a few a week. So I'm going to start with doing one a day and then go from there. Right. And I did that for a month and realized, gosh, even that, like some of these things, like I said, some of them are super easy and super dope. Some of them aren't bad at all. Like it's telling you about I think I told you about that one. A tight end in the NFL, he's told me his negative things, and one was that, yeah, he experienced racism when he was a kid. But you could tell it didn't really affect him. He told me about a story that like kids would say at a lunch, and like I'm thinking like, damn, like that affect me, you know? And he's like, yeah, because it is what it is. They didn't know better. That's what they were born into. And it's like, all right. And his gramps had Alzheimer's and passive Alzheimer's, but he said he was only 9 or something like that. And so it wasn't that those things didn't matter to him. Right. They just weren't tying in with something that I could tell that he would really want to be behind. And what I realized it wasn't that he didn't want to impact those things. It was that those things he's not going to bring the most value to because they're affecting him too much emotionally. He doesn't want to go in and have those negative aspects of, like, there's some guys that you shouldn't send them to a children's hospital a day before a game. Sure. Because they're going to be emotionally affected, you know? But what you need to do with those personality types, find something else. There's other things like him. He grew up in an amazing family. You know, all of his aunts and uncles and grandma would come over every time that he comes home. They play games. After his games on Friday night in high school, they'd come over and they'd play games. They'd go bowling, super competitive, just interacting like family, you know? And when he talks about that, that was emotional. That was dope. Yeah. Like sitting there and watching him talk about that. And that's like, man, like you don't have to be doing something that's negative. Like go take those things that made your family so freaking special. And there's other kids that have no idea that even exists. You can go to Boys and Girls Clubs. You can go to YMCA. You can connect with foster homes. You can connect with parents. Parents that grew up without that had bad childhoods or whatever, or just maybe never had a close family didn't talk, you know, but they want that for their own kids. Right. And the way that I thought about it too is like foster kids, like they don't know what it's like to have a family. So when they have a family one day, you know, where are they going to get those values from? Those opportunities to learn, like, this is how you love, this is how you laugh, this is how you teach, this is how you play. So that was an opportunity for him to go do that and like have fun doing it. He gets to do the thing that's the most fun thing in the world to him, you know? Yeah. Hang out with his family and do things that his family enjoys. And that's his opportunity to create a legacy now that is something that makes him happy, something that he makes a massive impact on. So it doesn't have to be negative. It can be fully positive conversation. It can be a fully positive impact. It can be all this stuff, you know?
Interesting. From working with different athletes from baseball, football, basketball, have you noticed a trend across like their attitudes or significant stories from each of the different professions? Like, is a football player more aggressive than a baseball player would be, or vice versa? Anything? Have you uncovered any of those stories, or is it just person to person type of?
I mean, even myself, it's surprising. It's they're all dudes at the end of the day. Yeah, you know, or girls at the end of the day. Like they're all people. And I think when I went into it with the football players at the beginning of doing these consultations, because I had never had those type of conversations with football players.
Yeah.
I've had them with baseball players, and Olympians and a couple NBA players at that point. Man, so I did think that there was going to be this tough wall to break down. And I've realized that it's no different from sport to sport. At the end of the day, they're all people. They're all have issues. They all have amazing things in their life. They all have, like different emotions and personalities. And like me as a baseball player, like I always had ideas of what I thought that a football player would be like or a basketball player would be like, and man, these made up like ideas and they're the same.
Yeah.
It's the same process. You got to take them through. It's the same. I think the only sense that might be a little bit different is a little bit of a surprise that baseball players have taken longer for consultations with, and I think it's because it's more of and just assuming off of personal experiences that it's more of this kind of dude like masculine environment in a baseball clubhouse, coming up through the minor leagues, getting hazed, having to adhere to these kind of old school values and old school mentalities. And so I think in a small sense that it has taken longer. It might be a little bit tougher to break through with those guys to get them to open up and be vulnerable. Whereas, almost every football player that I've worked with has been under a 2-hour call. They're like, those are the ones that I thought were going to be impossible to get to.
Interesting. Yeah.
But they seem to be the most willing to open up. Basketball players, pretty just open dudes too. It seems like, So I don't know. I think that's the biggest self-discovery is you might be from different cultures, you might be from different industries and sports, but you all still have the same relatabilities. Like when we're talking, we can talk about sports. It's no different really.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So why is the legacy thing so important to you? Why is the salvation or discovery, for that matter, of legacy the driving force for you?
Right, and I've thought about that too, and it's I think that it has to do with my dad. He played minor league ball, and I think it has to do with kind of growing up with that, and then also growing up with other athletes and seeing a lot of players' dreams kind of be taken from them without being prepared for it.
Like just sport being over.
Sport,
Okay.
yeah. And so I think that is what opened up my eyes to, like, people aren't having an opportunity to use these skills and these platforms and all these things like they should be, because their mindset's being driven in not always the wrong direction, but in typically the wrong direction. As a baseball player, for example, like, you have baseball coaches teaching you, and you have baseball coaches coaching you, and you got to be the best baseball player in the world. Each level you go up, it's all about reaching that next level. And there's nobody along the way, as a high school athlete, as a college athlete, as a minor league athlete, there's nobody along the way that comes around and says, all right, you're about to have this platform that people are going to listen to, that you're going to be able to really influence, even if it's in a small, like, minority, or if it's in a big majority. But you're going to have this platform, and here's how to use it. Nobody ever says that along the way. So guys will go through minor league careers, major league careers, Hall of Fame careers, without ever having a chance to look at it while they're in the moment and use that opportunity to do something bigger. It's always looking back. It's always after it's too late to use that platform that the guys, now they're at home, they're talking to different people that aren't baseball coaches and scouts and stuff. And they're opening their minds to these new ideas of, man, like, not everybody did just want me for my money. Not everybody did just want me for fame or anything like that. Like there are people that did just want me to go help because I could.
Yeah.
Because I did have that influence over those kids or over that community or over that business or whatever it was. And so that was what kind of made me think, like, when I started Athletes Brand, I wanted to be able to figure out a way to help ease that career transition. But then as my business grew, I started realizing, like, there's another opportunity where people are missed out, and that's being able to help figure out something that they could do now today while they still have the cameras on them, while they still have this opportunity to do something that in 20 years they're going to look back on and be like, damn, I'm so happy I did that and didn't waste my time.
But they don't, going back to, the hindsight of it all, like they don't talk about anything like that at in the NFL, the rookie symposium, where, you get the Herm Edwards of the world, like these really influential players / coaches / business people that like come in and, tell them about the jersey chasers and what to do with your money, how not to end up on 30 for 30 broke, like that. Is it just part of the deal and it just kind of just goes in one ear and out the other, or is it really just not covered at all?
It's selective. It's if you're a superstar college athlete that's coming in, expect to be a top round pick, then yeah, you're going to have these people around you that are trying to do that stuff, but not always. I just had Josh Rosen on our podcast last week, and one of the things that he said was, like, I asked him towards the end of the conversation, like, what's some business advice that you've gotten for this offseason? And he's like, so I haven't really gotten any business advice, but some things that I thought. And I'm thinking, dude's a starting quarterback as a rookie for the Arizona Cardinals, and there's nobody around you that's giving you advice before you put that jersey on or even during, like, while this happened. For me, that made no sense, and especially him being a business mind.
Right.
He's a very smart person. And he said he hadn't gotten any business advice. And so I think it's selective within agencies. What agency are you with? Do they focus on stuff like that? Do they not? And B, how big of a star are you right now?
Yeah.
If you're not a first round pick, then you're kind of SOL as far as people appearing in your life with the answers.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's the same for every sport, really. The bigger you are, the more that people will appear that do get your mind thinking in a certain direction. Because even NBA players, while you're in college, it's still about reaching that next level.
Right.
It's still about, man, I want that Nike deal. It's your mind hasn't really been opened up yet to these other ideas. That's why you start noticing that guys later in their career all of a sudden start speaking out and doing things a little bit differently than they did in their first 5 years. And I really think that it has nothing to do with them not caring. I think all these athletes care. You're around people your whole life,
right?
Like, you care about people. I think it's just about the right people having not stepped in at saying the right things, asking the right questions. There's nobody been there that's been like, man, here's what you can do to do this, but without anything in it for me.
Right.
And it's like another example is this football player that basically he's been getting invited to do football camps and stuff like that. And he's runs his own gym, and it's one of those things where it's like people are telling him, like, hey man, I know you're starting to start this gym, like, we got this camp coming up, you can come out, like, you should come out, like, meet these kids, maybe you can get some of them as clients and whatnot. So it's like, oh man, you're giving me a favor, thank you, I'm going to show up and do that. There's nobody going to that camp without his name on the front of it.
Right.
So he's passing on getting paid and stuff, and then it's finally this aha moment, like, shit. Like, I could have been doing all this on my own. I could have been getting paid for that. I thought these people just cared about me, like, in that sense. Like, they were hooking me up, and they didn't. So there are things, like, where players get taken advantage of, and it creates this mistrust. So you start looking at different ideas of when somebody comes to you with donate to this charity or whatever, then it's like, shit, you just want more of my money.
Right. Rather
than taking a step back and being like, oh, cool. Like, how could I help this? Maybe there's another way to do it without money first. Like, I suggest to players all the time, don't just go write a check to a cause. Like, unless you're really just, that's what you want to do, that's fine. If you just want to write checks and give it, that's fine. That's your personality. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But most of the guys I've discovered, they don't want to just write checks. They want to be there. They want to do something. But it seems like it's one of those things where they get asked so often that it becomes more of a burden or a mistrust. Like, is this real? Is this not? So it's odd, sticky situation.
Yeah.
During these consultations or even after the consultations, how do you make or get a player to get comfortable with telling their story or their cause or getting behind the cause? Because the case that I'm thinking of, like a Colin Kaepernick, for instance, it may not have been a cause that people, it's controversial cause, and people don't agree with it. So he got his head chopped off essentially for doing it. How do you get people in that role comfortable to share the message that they want to share without fear of being losing their job, getting kicked out of a league or things like that? Because those are real things that could potentially come up as somebody is sharing a controversial cause or story.
Yeah. It's honestly, it's just by, you got to care about them.
Yeah.
It's like a Colin Kaepernick situation. It's an interesting one because would I have given the advice to him to kneel? No.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't have. I would have come up with another idea or maybe do something after the national anthem each time. Just because I can see the uproar and it's gonna fog what his message is. If you're gonna do it, you've really got to be strategic about something that's that big.
Right.
You've got to do it in a sense that's not going to be able to have your message be completely drowned and replaced with something else. Like his message was about civil rights, yet what you see about it is him disrespecting the military, the flag, and our country.
It diluted everything.
It did. I know there's a lot of people that are going to say I'm an idiot, but I really think that him doing it for during the national anthem wasn't the best move. I think he could have made an insane impact and still be making it today if he would have done it at a different time. If it's kneeling that he wanted to do, then I don't know. I haven't thought through it this much, but there's other times that could have been done.
Right.
He could have done a fist. He could have put on an armband. Who was that? The Black 14 for Wyoming. Have you heard that story? Yeah. There's cool options that he really could have done and still been able to play this out. But with other players, getting through to get him to the point of opening up with that, and that's two things. One, we kind of connect on a level of we're both athletes. I'm in this for you. Here's my background. These guys have trusted me. In a locker room, you learn to trust other guys. You learn to trust your teammates, who they suggest to you.
Right.
And so I start off with that, but then I just, like I said earlier, you got to be freaking real. There's a point right before I start asking questions that it's, man, I'm about to start asking you these questions. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be honest with me. If you don't think that you can do that, I can't talk to you. I don't have the time. You don't have the time. This is going to go 4 hours and we're going to go nowhere. And a very, very, very important piece of this puzzle is the one out of those 30 that didn't cry. He wasn't on with his spouse. And there's a very important piece of that puzzle when your spouse is on the call with you. And that's because you have this extra comfort, but you also have the okay. More often than not, a spouse knows something that you're not telling me. And she'll go to that next step and say, honey, you have to tell him this. You have to talk about this.
Interesting.
He's saying that you have to be vulnerable, and if you're not, it's a waste of our time.
So you have an extra layer of accountability towards that vulnerability. Interesting construct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without that, it makes it very difficult.
What do you do for the single guys?
We talk to him.
Okay.
I hope that it works out.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that was a process that I was trying to figure out when I realized that was
Sure.
not everybody has a wife, and I don't want everybody's girlfriend on these calls.
Sure.
You know?
Right.
And so that was an issue, and has it been a major issue? No, but at the same time, there's a lot of calls that have ended and a lot of face-to-faces that have ended not feeling like we truly accomplished everything that could have been possible. So that's frustrating, but taking it to that next step of how do you make them feel okay with doing this? And that's because you make them feel okay because they're not doing something wrong. They're doing something that A, they're really good at. B, they know a lot about because they've lived this.
Right.
And C, we're giving them a strategy basically of how to implement this now. So if you know what you're talking about if you go kneel for the flag and you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to get eaten alive. Your text is going to get changed in every direction.
Yep.
You know, and I think that was another major issue too with the flag is that Cap did it, but then other players were giving different stories than what he was saying.
Yeah, it wasn't conscious.
Right. They weren't all kneeling
Right.
unified for the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One
that
was
makes a
for
lot of sense.
Trump and one was for racism and one was for police brutality.
Right. Those aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not.
Right.
Yeah, they all fall under civil rights. But there needs to be, when you've got this many people, and not only this many people, this many racist people as well, getting to throw their word into the jargon, you know,
Yeah.
it's going to get fogged out.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So you've got to create a unified message, and that's something where I guarantee, like he did it. I think he said he asked his teammates or something, didn't he?
Sure. Yeah.
But he did it, and that should have been something that he sat down with the union on and said, "Hey, here's my plan. I did this once. I know it got a big reaction. I think that we should create this unified message. What do you guys think about this? Are you guys on board?" They might have said yes. They might have said no.
Yeah.
But at least it would have created this opportunity to create something that everybody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's what we say to the press in the interviews, all this. So that's what has to be done too when the guy has what their legacy is.
Yeah.
He has to know his mission. What's the goal that you're going to accomplish? So that every time you go do this, you know exactly why you're doing it. You know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how you're going to get there. And you're going to be able to relay that same message to that next person.
Yep.
And if you can't do that, that's not your legacy. It's not. If you don't have that crystal clear of an understanding of what you want to do and what you're trying to accomplish, that's not you. Leave that to somebody else.
Yeah.
Let's keep trying to find what's you,
Right.
you know?
That's super interesting because it reminds me of like the conversation. I don't know if you've seen the show. It's on HBO. I saw it on Amazon Prime, but with LeBron James, The Shop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we was talking to the athletes, and
Is it good?
It's very good.
Okay.
And it goes like what we was talking about, how he shares his message openly now, so he speaks against things that he doesn't believe in. But it took him till after what happened at Miami when they lost the championship for him to say, I was trying to people please everybody for my entire career, but after we lost the championship in Miami, I said fuck it. And I just started speaking on cases that I want to talk, or causes that I want to speak about, whether it's against presidents, whether it's against blacks or whites, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I lost following because of it. He's like, but it spoke to what really resonated with me.
Right.
And I found that interesting. And as he's talking with these other athletes and both women and men, a lot of them haven't gotten to that clarity point that he had gotten to. And that's why they're looking up to LeBron as the guy who is the voice of the younger generations for athletes. And it's like trying to find it earlier in the career, like what you're doing with these athletes, I think is incredible because a lot of them don't have that guidance or those people that they can go to where they can share their message openly or to even think about that. So it's pretty cool because the stuff that you're hitting on is exactly what, these guys like LeBron James are talking about nowadays.
Right.
But even so, if they get to the end of their career, they no longer have the platform or the social capital because the big machine of media and the entities that want a piece of you, but when you're done playing, like those access points aren't as accessible.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can get on board with the cause, but you're on the other side of the microphone now.
All of a sudden, your favorite sushi restaurant doesn't open back up at 1 o'clock for you. Life changes when you retire. It does. And most of these guys don't realize it until later in their career.
Yeah.
And I used to think it was because they were young and ignorant. It's not. It's because they're afraid to ask the questions to the veterans. They don't think that they have that access to the veterans that they really do.
Is that same perception? Is it the same perception in reverse where the vets don't want to give that guidance?
I think it depends on who you are. But from what I've seen, a lot of these guys, they're more of, hey, I'm going to show up. I'm going to lead by example. The older you get, the more you get about leading by example. And you retire, and now all of a sudden you want to start sharing all your knowledge.
Yeah.
You know? And with these guys, it's almost this, I haven't earned my right to ask this stuff, to get in there.
The seniority.
As a young athlete. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this feeling of seniority. when I do think it's a responsibility on both ends.
Sure.
I think as a young athlete, get access, man.
Because it's different. Because I find in the documentary that's about to come out that I'm in, Beyond the Game, the only reason I got kept in post edit is because in my interview I draw this massive correlation between the military and being a professional athlete in terms of identity when it's all over. But to your point about not feeling that you've earned the right to ask the questions to the veterans, the guys ahead of you, the guys that are on the way out, what would you have done different type conversations, you're like always told to be proactive in seeking that knowledge so that as you progress through the ranks, you don't make the same mistakes that your seniors did. Right. So I didn't realize that that's one of the huge differences organizationally, that it's not endorsed, you know what I mean, culturally to go and essentially admit your ignorance by asking these questions to those that know more than you do.
And it's not every team either.
Sure.
I mean, like I've heard great things about the Spurs. I've heard that they're young athletes, they come through and Pop's running them through the same thing. It's this unified thing. The stronger that your rookies are, the stronger we are.
But he's an Air Force Academy guy.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
There you go.
I mean, have it like that. So that kind of speaks to that culture a little bit.
So is Coach K.
Right. West
He's
Point
a
guy.
West Point.
Yeah. So there's something about that I think every team, while you're in it and your social capital is at its highest, that, from a team to team standpoint, regardless of sport, can be, positively integrated into the culture where it's like, ask the questions, like the stuff that we're talking about, the social impact doesn't have shit to do with you losing your starting job by giving me too much advice. You know what I'm saying? So I find it interesting that there's this accidental correlation between asking questions about what I'm doing off the field affects our relationship on the field.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It sort of leads to the interesting time. We talked about it off the mic is what social media has done for people's voices, where you don't need an NBC, ABC to get your message out there anymore.
Right.
You can make a Instagram post, a Twitter post, and say anything you want, and people are going to, go towards that message. So there's no filter anymore, because you can have open dialogue, open conversations with the world we live in today. And I think that's a great thing.
It's going to be interesting over these next few years because like Josh Rosen, he said it the other day, like he wants to start a podcast.
Yeah.
And Trevor Bauer wants to start a podcast. And I'm starting to notice all these young athletes, they're wanting to have podcasts. And it's not necessarily like Josh, he said, it has nothing to do with wanting to get his own message out. Like, he doesn't care about that. He said he just wants to talk to cool people. It's an excuse to be able to get cool people on, be able to pick their brains, learn from them more.
Yeah.
That's a rookie football player that's taken his own action to go out and better himself. And he's using a current platform and a current opportunity to be able to do that. If he can go get big name influencers to come on, if they're going to be able to get value out of basically being able to have this story shared, you know, like he could probably get access to The Rock and those guys if he wanted them on his show, because he's got a following and people are going to listen to it. And if somebody says something right, then who knows where that'll end up. Be on ESPN or whatever. But it'll be interesting over these next few years to see how many athletes do take that shift into creating their own content. And so that'll be fun.
Well, that speaks to what you're building on the branding marketing side of the house of the Legacy Factory, which is our 2019 initiative. And what you're bringing to the table is the business of the cause and answering that question of what's left for you. What do you want to leave the world with when sport is over, when you're done? And creating an opportunity for them while they're at their peak to make the smoothest transition away from sport as possible.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, with athletes, it is, and same thing with the military. It's a very tight-knit community. You start realizing that you go to one dude's parties, there's basketball, football, soccer players there, there's all kinds of random athletes there. It's not just baseball players only hanging with baseball players. It's not how it works.
Right.
You know, it's camaraderie. And so I think that that's something that is why I'm so passionate about helping out athletes on that aspect of it, and wanting to combine kind of what I believe are my skill set, and being able to help figure out what their businesses are, what their ideas are, their plans. I want to create an opportunity for athletes to be able to have the best possible setup. And it's not this isn't necessarily for the LeBron Jameses of the world. Mm-hmm. You know, he's good. Like he can do all this on his own. He can go put people around him to make all of his problems become non-problems, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's for the other 99% of athletes. Mm-hmm. It's for the guys that when they retire, who knows how long they'll be able to live off of that income.
Right.
Because that's another thing that people bring up is, well, to get paid minimum wage in the major leagues, there's still over $500,000. Yeah, but you're also, you don't just get away with being a major league player and living on a $60,000 salary, you know, and saving all that money. You just don't. You've got to be able to, if you're married, you've got to be able to make sure that they're good, your kids are good, they're safe, that they can fly and come see you, because you're going to be on the road 162 or 80 something, 90 something games, you know, you're going to be gone. Mm-hmm. So you've got to be paying for flights and travel and food and all this stuff to be able to help out while you're not at home. Right. But also to be able to make sure that your family has this opportunity they should be having, like all your other teammates' families have. It's kind of when you're a Jones, you're a Jones. Mm-hmm. Right. You know, you don't just get to live in this completely different lifestyle. I think that's what people don't understand with pro athletes, is that kind of difference of, you can't just save all that money to retire off of $400,000
sure
as a 1-year player, you know, for the next 50 years of your life. It's just not going to happen. Right. You got to have jobs and opportunity and all that stuff. So it's interesting, but that's what I want to be able to accomplish with that side of the legacy factory, is being able to set these guys up with opportunity, with knowledge. So learn how to benefit and leverage their social media today. Learn how to get their own endorsement deals and sponsorships. A lot of Olympic athletes, you go 4 years living on somebody's couch, and then go win a gold medal. You know, and now you get to go 4 years living in a studio apartment, balling. You know, yeah. Like, why don't these guys and these girls, like, why don't they have access to get paid? They're professional athletes. They're on the biggest stage in the world at one point. Yeah. You know, why are they not getting paid for the next 4 years? It's because they don't know how to get the right endorsements. Right. Companies just don't just go out and seek out mid-tier people or low-tier people.
Right. For every one Michael Phelps, there's 252 other athletes. Right. Representing just America. Yeah. That nobody knows. Right.
But companies want those guys. They just don't know it. So if the player went to them with a plan of, hey, here's my social following, here's the events that I'm going to go to this year, where I can get your company seen, here's the stuff that I'm willing to do. I'm willing to go out and hustle stuff for you because I need money, you know, and here's what I need in exchange. Figure out what your wants are. Yeah. And then you figure out what your ask is. Guarantee you, everybody that makes the Olympic team, for those 4 years leading up to it, they could get endorsement deals. Not even close to all of them have an endorsement deal.
It's true.
And it's just because they don't know how to. And I get it. You're not taught in college how to get an endorsement. You're not even taught how to do your taxes. You know, like all the things that athletes really, really, really need when they get out of college aren't the things that are necessarily pinpointed in college. You know, and that's what I really want to cover with the Legacy Factory, is to be able to, when guys are coming in to train, you know, get their workout in, do everything that has to do with their on-field legacy. It'd be everything from massage to nutrition to the gym to all that stuff, to not only just build themselves as an athlete, but to make it become completely normal that you're putting in that same amount of time into building yourself as a person, as a businessman, and setting up your career for your family now or your future family. Right. You know, that's building that legacy. What are you going to leave behind for the world? Why is the world better off for having had you in it? And it's not because you're the fastest runner in the world. It's not. Right. You know, it's what you're doing with that, with those very unique skills, those unique values that you have, what are you doing with those to make it something that you could just impact the world with today, you know? And that's going to still be able to leave that thing that when you're dead, there's still people around that are impacted from what you did. Every single athlete has the opportunity to do that. Every single person has the opportunity to do that.
Right.
Athletes just have the platform to be able to get it out in a much easier, quicker way.
Right.
You know?
I love that, man.
Massive.
So it's fun. That's another area I kind of wanted to go on this. I'm going to release the second chapter of my book, hopefully at the end of this week, on podcast and a blog form, because I ran into, towards the end of the book, I wanted to start sharing different stories of how people discovered their purpose, of people's different input on purpose or legacy or fulfillment. And I didn't want to pigeonhole it into just athletes.
Right.
But to bring up that point of why I was whatever it's called on
Air quoting
air quoting purpose is it's something that with what I do is very, very, very important. I've realized, because a lot of the athletes they bring up when we're having these legacy calls, they bring up, yeah, man, just haven't really been able to figure out what my purpose is yet. And the more I started hearing that, the more I started realizing, like, shit, like that's what everybody's talking about right now. You know, I've got multiple friends that have podcasts that have something to do with the word purpose. And so I threw it in Google, and it's one of the most searched terms in the world. Is how to find my purpose. It's weird, that, and how to find how to know what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Like those are two things that massively searched on Google. And I hear this word come up more and more and more, and I think it's just a common thing today. And I started thinking about it, I was like, well, shit, like I used to speak on purpose in a small sense. Like I used to have this talk. It was called How to Live a Life of Purpose. And so when I was going through it, and I never really thought about it, like looking back in that sense, until I started realizing, like, God, why do so many guys bring up like this word in these calls? And I realized when I was trying to put together this game plan for my talk and trying to figure out, like, all right, well, how can I make this just be so impactful that people leave today knowing exactly how to go find their purpose? And I couldn't. I just thought on it, stressed on it so much, but I couldn't figure out that map, you know? And I ended up just sharing my story through those talks. And I figured out, well, maybe this is the only possible way to discover your purpose, is just by hearing how other people did it. You know, and then so it sparked conversation. I got amazing feedback on all these and stuff, and stopped doing it. But what I realized, I never looked up what the word purpose means. It was just always assumed that I knew what it meant. The word purpose is interesting because people want to know what their purpose in life is. Yet the definition of that word literally tells you that you have no possible way of ever knowing what your purpose in life is.
No way.
It's a definitive answer, basically, of why you exist, of why you're here, why you're doing this. You can have purpose in this podcast. There's an end goal of why we're doing it. You can have purpose in a board game that you're playing. Whoever gets the most points wins. You know, there's things in life that there's a purpose for, and you can have purpose in them. But life itself, why you exist, what you're meant to do, it's not possible to know, because there's nobody that's ever going to come down and say, hey dude, here's what your purpose is. You know, you're meant to have this podcast because you're going to impact lives. It's not going to happen. You can assume it is. But this creates an issue.
Yeah.
This creates an issue because there's so many people that are depressed, sad. Like there's people committing suicide because they don't feel like they have any value to others. And that's where that word purpose comes in.
Right.
Well, he knows his purpose.
It's a
To
misnomer.
find mine.
Yeah.
He doesn't know shit. He doesn't know his purpose. You know, not you, but you don't. And that's this common misconception that's happened today. And it's getting worse because you have all these people, these influencers on social media talking about their purpose. You know, my purpose is this. I'm going to go across the country and change lives. And my purpose is this. I'm going to go to the homeless shelter. It's not your freaking purpose, man.
Yeah.
That's bringing you fulfillment. That's very different. It's bringing you a sense of purpose. It's very different. Once you understand that you won't ever know your purpose on earth. You'll never know your purpose to existence. Once you understand that, you can start focusing on things that are going to bring you ridiculous amount of happiness. You can start focusing on things that, all right, is this my purpose to come on today's podcast? No, but it's going to bring me fulfillment. Might have fun doing it. You know, and when you're doing things that are bringing you fulfillment,
Right.
that's an opportunity now to bring you to things that are going to bring you joy, and then bring you to things that you're going to start feeling like, damn, feel fulfilled from it. Like, I really want to do that again. And you're going to do it again. You're like, damn, I want to do that again. Now you start telling everybody about it. Now all of a sudden, fuck, that's my passion. I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have done that if you would have been pursuing what your purpose is, because you would keep finding things that, shoot, that's not my purpose. That's not my purpose. That's not my purpose. Because it's not possible to find it. So you're going to strike out every single time. Every time. It's not until you find fulfillment that you're going to be able to feel what you're actually chasing the whole time.
Right.
You're chasing a sense of purpose. That's very different. That's that feeling of, man, I feel like this is probably what I'm here to do. That's fulfillment. That's a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
That's understanding that I'll never know exactly what I was supposed to do. But for me, that's a freaking blessing to never know what my purpose is, man.
Right.
If I never know what my purpose is, if I knew what my purpose was, I'd be doing nothing but that.
Yeah.
If my purpose was, and I wrote this in the book, like if I knew that my purpose was to help people discover their legacy, or to write a book helping people discover their legacy, then I'm going to write that freaking book for the next however many days it takes. I'm not going to be coming on a podcast. I'm not going to be going to home for whatever, you know. I'm not going to be going on a vacation. I'm not going to be going out to dinner with the boys, because I know how big of an impact I can make in this. I was put on this earth to do this. I'm going to do nothing but this. You know, I'm going to be the greatest at it. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to keep sharing the story of my book. I'm going to rewrite it when I need to. I'm going to crush it. But I'll never have a chance to discover different things that I love to do. I'm never going to be creative and innovate. I'm never going to have a chance to go out and find things that I'm passionate about, because I'm going to be so solely focused on that. If I would have only focused on baseball, if I wouldn't have stepped away from baseball, I never would have discovered what this is, like this legacy discovery that I'm doing right now, and how much more passionate about it I am than I was about baseball. If baseball was my purpose, I never would have stepped out of that box, because I was having fun doing it. I was enjoying it. Why would you step out of that if you thought it was your purpose and you liked doing it? Come on, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know? So that's why I think it's just so important that people do change their mindset of this having to discover your purpose thing. And also with passions too. I mean, passion, you can discover your passion, but it's exactly through what I just told you about with our legacy calls. It's discovering your story. Who are you? You know, you can't discover your story if you're not out living, right?
Right.
You have no story. You can't just have a story by sitting at home every day Googling how to find my passion.
Yeah.
You know,
The damn truth right
I
there.
love that, man.
That's the damn truth.
Yeah.
it'll help. It might give you ideas. You have to go freaking live them, though. Go find out now. You just found something that looks interesting to you on Google? Awesome. Go try it. Maybe you'll be passionate about it. Maybe you'll love it.
Right.
Also, though, if you do something once, you're not going to know if you're passionate about it. Don't go sample everything one time. If you like doing it, if it brings you joy, if it brings you fulfillment, do it more. Do whatever brings you fulfillment. Do whatever brings you joy.
Right.
You know, you might surprise yourself. So that's it.
I love that. Hell yeah.
Love that shit, man. No, I think that the word that keeps coming up in my mind with where you're at and everything that you're about to do is clarity. You're now clear. You know, before that conversation with your mentor, you had an idea, but now you're clear. And that just kind of paves the way for everything that you're and streamlines your process.
That was an interesting thing too with that conversation, because I think, and I've thought about this before, and I really, really, really trust and respect and love and admire my dad. But because he's so close to me, I don't think that I would have taken that advice the same way.
Absolutely not.
I wouldn't have rethought this and sat on it and
That's
soaked
very
on it,
real.
you know?
That's very real.
Slick is the right mindset, the right timing, the right person. That just so
Absolutely.
happened for me.
Well, you see it all the time in coaching. You know, how many times have you been given the cue to do something? And this happens in our circle at the gym all the time. You know, I'll be working with somebody day in, day out forever, trying to get them to do their first pull-up, for example, right? Give them every cue known to man. We run every drill, blah, blah, blah. Somebody else comes in, right person, right time, mindset, right? The barriers that every relationship creates barriers,
Right.
somehow, some way, right? Somebody fresh comes in my mind, tells them the exact same thing, and it clicks, right? So like that dynamic doesn't just exist between you and your dad.
Right.
That dynamic exists between people in general. You know, like how many times have you heard that? I've been telling you that for years.
Right.
I just had to hear it from somebody else.
100%.
You know, and that's very real.
Right.
You know, that's a thing. Yeah,
So
for sure.
true.
So, but before we let you get out of here, man, we're gonna revisit our original 2 questions from over 100 episodes ago, because I'm interested to see how different they are, if they're different now, your answers. And so I ask them both, and then go ahead and fire off.
Okay.
Speaks to your routine and your sustainable energy. So, on a daily basis, in your routine, what do you do each and every day to feed yourself and kickstart the motivation that you bring to the table on these calls and as you build your legacy? And then, what do you do each and every day to fuel yourself and make that energy sustainable?
Right. I don't remember what I said on this the last time. I'm assuming it was probably something along the lines of that I don't have a routine. But a lot has changed. There was a point where I'd been asked that a few times, and I was just like, man, everybody doesn't have to have a routine. Like for me, it's just I get started by going when I need to go and whatnot. And I quickly realized that wasn't working for me. You know, so what I do now is like one thing. Water is one of the most important things to me now, and it happened of rediscovery in college. I did this thing with a teammate of mine where we just started crushing water, you know, and it was this weird thing for me. And it was right after my mom had told me just this crazy story about an aunt that claims that she cured her cancer by herself by drinking more water. You know, I was like, this is crazy. Yeah, so as he brought up something about we need to drink more water, so I told him that story. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
Not even a week into it, all of a sudden I had more energy, but I also felt like I could see a little clearer. We did this for about a month, and my vision legitimately changed. Like I could legitimately see better. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird, but I think what it was is that you're flushing shit out of your system. You know, it has nothing to do with curing your eyes and making your vision better. It was like clearing out the cloud that was in there.
Sure.
And it was creating more energy for me. And I get more energy from drinking water than I do from coffee.
Right.
And so that was a big change that I make sure I do every day now. And then mentally preparing for our consultations or for my consultations is I don't know what the right word is because I don't meditate. I don't know what Zen is. But I do try to go into this mental space where I try to see if I can just not think of anything at all for 30 seconds and try to get my mind to this reset point where I really clear everything out of my head right now. Because if I go into one of these calls with baggage from something else that happened that day, it could be anything from relationship to work to anything, you know, I could have missed my meal or something. I don't know, but I need that time to be able to clear that space. And that's what I found is good for me. Sometimes I have to do it 5, 6, 7 times, but until I can sit there for about 30 seconds without anything in my head, then I'm not ready to start the next thing because I realize that that's what it about takes for me to really feel cleared and reset.
Sure.
You know, yeah, like I said, I don't know if that's called anything in any of yoga or anything like that, but but it really helps.
Sure.
Everything else, morning routine, don't really have a set routine. There's stuff that I've naturally, I guess I didn't naturally, or initially I tried to put it in. Like I tried to start doing 10 minutes of reading, and I started trying to do 10 minutes of listening to my Bible on my audiobooks. And so now it's one of those things that has become routine. So I do notice it when I miss it.
Yeah.
But it's not a set focus of having to make sure that this is done. But I really think those help me get my mind go in the right direction.
Yeah.
Get my day kind of jump started.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess those three things:
Sure.
water, resetting with those 30-second pauses, and having something that gets my mind going in a creative way in the morning.
Right on.
Oh,
Love it, man.
and then where can everybody in this community go follow you and support you with everything you have going, boss?
Yeah, no, on Instagram, I'm really not active on anything else. At Kyle Mauch, KyleMauch. And then you can follow what we're doing at Athletes Brand on Instagram, Facebook, everything else at Athletes Brand, ATHLETESBRAND. If you're wanting to connect further, have any questions about legacy consulting or anything like that, go to my website. It's at kylemauch.com. Then we've also got, if you're an athlete, because it's my website's for everybody, business people, athletes, whatever. But if you're an athlete, go to 1000athletes.com. So that's the number 1000athletes.com. And that's where we've got everything from personal branding, marketing to legacy consulting, and any other kind of consulting for athletes and people in sports. So
Dope.
Nice, man.
awesome.
Dude, really appreciate you being on the show today. You've really gone the extra mile in helping us empower people's journey. So
Awesome.
that's massive,
Yeah,
brother.
man.
Appreciate you guys having me
appreciate it,
on.
man.
It's a
Appreciate you,
blast.
boss.
Yeah, I'm glad we caught you before you head up to the
Couple weeks, man.
the frozen wet tundra.
I know it. So it's not the most ideal time to make a move to Oregon. Leave perfect 70-degree weather in Arizona
Oh,
for
man.
rain and snow. So
Speaking of making moves, one last thing before we close out the show. Announcement Jeff and I have. We are, as of January, leaving the Shrug Collective. Feed Me, Fuel Me will continue to exist, but we will be 100% on our own channel. So you continue to follow everything that we're doing with the show, the podcast, and a couple of other initiatives we're bringing to the table in 2019 at feedmefuelme.com, and then on all social channels at Feed Me Fuel Me. So just the way ahead, moving into the new year, that's one of the moves that we're making. Everything's good with the collective. I want to make sure that nobody thinks there's any bad juju between the two of us, and we definitely have some future collaborations in the works as well. But it's time to move on and do our own thing in Feed Me Fuel Me world. So really appreciate you being on, man.
Yeah, player.
Thank you, dude, and
you.
looking forward to collaborating later on
got
down the
some
road.
big things next year,
For
man.
sure,
Yes,
brother.
sir. I know.
Hell yeah. We'll do it. All right, man.
man.
And
you.
until next time, guys, continue to empower your journey, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Feed Me, Fuel Me.